You want to try starting this one?
Nope. Because I would mess it up.
Welcome to Real Talk, where we give real answers to real questions from real worship leaders. So if you are a real worship leader with a real question and you want a real answer, head right here and submit your question for a future episode. Got some good questions this week. My friend Jimmy from Hey Worship Leader is going to help me answer them. Let's talk about it. How can I effectively run the worship program and grow as a leader with a pastor who is a bully? I know Jimmy cringed when I first told him this question.
I don't like it. I feel like if the pastor is being a bully, he's not pastoring very well. Because that's not the call of a pastor. That's my initial reaction. But then we've also had discussions where this term bully is being thrown around. And it's not really bullying. It's just disagreeing. So it's hard to read into this question, but I think it's good to set those two expectations out there.
Yeah, I think here's what I've seen, Jimmy, and you guys can let us know in the comments. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Thinking out loud.
I've seen a rise in like these church documentaries. I think people must be eating them up. And that's not to say that there aren't like problems in these churches that people are making these documentaries about. But I just see like some of the here's the perfect example. When the Hillsong, like the Carl Lentz sort of docu-series came out, and I know that there were other problems there as well that were actual problems, but the first clip I saw from that left a bad taste in my mouth was like, first of all, it caught my attention because it was an interview with this girl. She was like, I serve on the worship team, and my boyfriend and I were sleeping together. Carl Lentz called us into his office, and he said, you know, you can't do this. You can't be on the worship team anymore. And I was like, how can you do that? I can't believe that. And like, I understand that there's hypocrisy in his story specifically,
right.
But Jimmy and I just filmed a video like 20 minutes ago where I said the same exact thing. Like, that in and of itself, even if it's a hypocritical leader doing it,
doesn't make it
bullying.
false. Right.
It's still the right standard. And so my point in bringing that up is I feel like as more and more of these docuseries drop, documentaries on the dark secrets behind X, Y, and Z, like more people are starting to question their pastors and come out and say, I feel like I've been bullied by my pastor as well. And I'm not saying that you haven't. I'm just saying, like, sometimes we have a disagreement with our pastor. And because of the structure that God has put in the church, who do we submit to in the church? We submit to our elders' leadership in terms of doctrine at the very least.
Yeah.
So I just want to preface the answer to this question. First of all, your pastor might be a bully because there's a lot of bully pastors out there. But second of all, sometimes you just disagree with the theological direction of your church and you come to different conclusions about how to do ministry than what your pastor wants, and you disagree on that. You might even disagree on that adamantly, and you don't like each other anymore. That doesn't mean that you were bullied by an authority structure in your church. It just means you disagreed with them, and they were in a higher position of authority in your church because they were an elder in your church, and you have to submit to them. So I just want to get that out of there because I've been waiting to say that for a long time. I don't even know if Jimmy agrees with that or not, and that's fine if he doesn't. But I just want to say that, all right? Not everybody's being bullied in the church. Some people are.
Yes.
All right? I'll soften the statement with that.
There you go.
So how do we deal with somebody who is actually bullying? What do you think bullying means? Let's define what bullying would actually look like.
It's on my mind because we just watched a video last night. That's a kind of an old video, but it's circling around again where a pastor just like walks through his congregation calling out members and saying, you're trash. I love you, but you're horrible.
And that video room ain't going to be a youth hangout. We might as well just fix this thing. If you loved me and you submitted to me, you'd know what my heart is and my message is, and you wouldn't go about establishing your own kingdom in the video room.
You know, and just like, it's just, to me, I was like, okay, this is bullying. I just wouldn't be there. So if a pastor is actually bullying, like I said at the front, I don't feel like he's pastoring or he's not fit to be a pastor. If it's actual bullying of some sort, so whether it's public bullying or forcing someone, I don't know what that looks like. I've never been bullied like that. I've disagreed with people, but I would never call anything I've experienced bullying, so I don't know that I've seen it to define it well, but I felt like I had no control. I feel like a bully is the one being bullied has no control over any of the outcome, isn't heard. So a leader who's over you, who is not bullying you, may disagree, and their decision might be final, but you would still feel like you're a part of a congregation, a part of a family who's been heard, and you should be being discipled well through that, because that's their role in your life. If those things aren't happening, like we said in another video, it's never my first piece of advice to leave a church. But if my main spiritual authority is bullying me, you don't have to stay there. You do not have to stay. Like, God is not calling you to a bullied pastor. That guy is not pastoring you. That's what I want to rescue people. Like, that's where my heart's going right now. If this guy is actually bullying you, you don't have to stay there.
And I think, like, I'm trying to think of specific examples of what bullying might look like as opposed to just disagreeing. And I think bullying is like when it becomes personal, and it's not just like ministry decisions, but it's like I don't know, if like your pastor was like, Jimmy, you sounded really horrible this week, and they tell you that every single week, and it's like, I don't know, like that's not helpful then, right? Like, it's just complaining about something. Do you have any other examples you can think of? Like, what would bullying look like? Well,
I would think if it was like what I was saying, like if I had no control over something. So like if, like even what you just said, it would be something where it would be like, this is a personality disagreement, or my pastor's giving me feedback and I don't like the way he's giving it to me. Bullying, it would be getting more into saying things like, you are a horrible worship leader saying hurtful things that is not productive. Like, why, how are you? But then at that point, why are you even there? You know, so like that, when it slips into bullying, stuff like that, where you have no control, this is the man of God, so you're not allowed to talk back to him or something like that. Like my pastor would immediately say, hey, we are all, the priesthood, this is my role, but I'm not above you. So if your pastor doesn't have that, I'm saying he's not a pastor, so you don't have to stay there. So examples of being a bully would be like, you just have no control over anything, and you're being put down, and there's no sense of discipleship or edification or anything like that.
Yeah, I think like wielding the authority that somebody does have, because our elders do have authority in the church, but it's not an authority to tell us like what to do morally in every aspect of our lives. It's like they uphold the sound doctrine, and I guess there's a church discipline part to that, biblically speaking. But it's like overstepping the authority that they have and saying, I am the leader in your church, and so you must do this. I think
if your pastor comes to you and says, you're sleeping with your girlfriend or boyfriend, you need to stop, that is not bullying. Now, he may say it in a way you didn't like it. Maybe he needs to grow in maturity in the way he's saying those things, but he's saying the truth of the gospel and trying to bring you to holiness. If it goes to like, I'm thinking of like personal characteristics that they don't like about you, and they're just putting you down or shaming you. I think shame is a big word. If they're just shaming you, that begins to slip into the bulliness, I guess.
Here's the question though. In that environment where you have, and I'm trying to use a different word than bullying, but maybe like an over-controlling pastor who micromanages everything, tells you that you're doing a bad job. How do you effectively run a worship program and grow as a leader in that organization is what the actual question is now that we've prefaced it. So when you're in that environment, I think one of the things that I heard Jimmy say is, if you're in that environment, first of all, seek godly counsel from people that you do trust and ask them, like, because we don't know your situation. You might be being bullied. Ask somebody who's in that situation around you who can verify whether that's true or not, and then you make the decision, should I still be in this place? Because like Jimmy said, you don't have to be there. There's a million other churches, and our suggestion is never leave this church right away. That's always a slow answer decision to come to. But ask people around you. Seek godly wisdom. Because the problem isn't just, how do I struggle in my ministry with a pastor who is a bully? It's should I even be there in the first place? Or why is nobody else, I think, in the organization dealing with this person?
Yeah.
Because if it is an actual problem, then I think one of the things that you do is you bring it up to the elders in your church.
Well, I was going to say, we're getting into, polity here, but a church that safeguards itself with elders would safeguard against this sort of thing. If a church has the one pastor, which it sounds like this is one pastor, and there's no one above to go to, that's when it gets a little scary. But if you've determined that it's not bullying, let's go the other way. It's not really bullying, but there's some immaturity in the pastor, and you decide you need to stay because there's no real reason to leave. This might be something where iron sharpens iron. I would continue to build trust with this person so that they don't feel because who knows, like, let's say it's not bullying, but they're just immature. They might be responding to something that you're doing and you don't even know it's a trigger for them. So this could just be a sense of a season of you asking God, like, where do I need to grow myself, and how can I help this other believer along who also happens to be my pastor, and how can we? So it might just be a season of being shaped and formed into a better leader for your next ministry assignment.
I'm just thinking of, like, I have no greater respect for somebody. Well, maybe I shouldn't put it that way, but, like, I highly respect the pastor in my church. If they are serving under the way that the Bible says that the church should be structured, from a church polity understanding, meaning that they don't serve isolated as an island as, like, the one man in charge of the entire church, but they serve with a plurality of elders who are keeping them accountable. There must be some accountability in the church.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, I know you wanted to hear, or maybe you didn't want to hear, but I assume you wanted to hear, hey, just keep going, do whatever you can do, try to, work around the preferences of the pastor and just make them happy. I don't know if you wanted to hear that or not, but, like, I feel like sometimes people want to be reassured in that way. But if this is a problem big enough that you want to send it in to be answered on here, then it is probably a problem that needs to be addressed in your church in one way or another. Mm-hmm. And that's not the easy answer, but that's the right answer. If it's causing you this much mental anguish, talk to your pastor one-on-one, share your concerns. We're supposed to go to people one-on-one, bring our grievances to them, say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I always say on Real Talk, like, 95% of problems in church can be solved by just communicating. Like, if you've only ever thought about this and never talked to your pastor about it, it's time to talk to your pastor about it and say, I'm uncomfortable with the way that you've done X, Y, and Z.
And if you're so afraid to talk to your pastor about it because he's a bully, then he might be bullying you.
That's true, yeah.
So use that as a litmus test, I guess. You should be able to go to your pastor and share what you're feeling.
I can't imagine, like, not being able to go to my pastor and say pretty much anything, any concern that I have about something in ministry or about something. Like, he tells the staff, like, if you see something morally wrong in my life, like, come up to me and tell me because I want to correct it. Like, that's how a pastor's supposed to act. Yeah. They aren't above you, like, in all areas of life.
That's right.
So deal with the problem. Go to your pastor one-on-one. If you don't feel comfortable with that for a good reason, then talk to the other leaders in your church. Not just anybody in your church, but the people who could actually solve the problem in your church. And if there's nobody in your church that holds that office,
run.
I mean, if there's no accountability structure in your church, that would be very concerning to me.
I've been seeking resources online for a while now as I started helping out as a backup for leading worship at our church. Through that search, I've come across your videos, so thank you for making them. They've been very helpful. I found your church's live streams on YouTube and watched a little bit. Our church is currently in a ban of doing Hillsong and Bethel music. I watched your video regarding that and I pretty much agree with it. But regardless, I've been seeking music and finding some things, but just wondering what resource you use. Thanks, Ben.
How do you find new songs to do in your church?
Well, one thing, and we talked about this previously in another video, but I do listen to people who suggest songs. I when people suggest songs in my church, it doesn't mean I'll do them, but I do consider them, and I want them to know that I consider them. You can go watch that video for more details about that. So that is how some songs are brought to my attention that I would not have found on my own. I also will set aside time to go search for new songs, because I'm not always the one finding the newest stuff, because a lot of times I'm busy with the things that we have, and I'm not just looking at the CCLI Top 100, although sometimes I do look at those. And then Praise Charts has different charts of like what's popular this month. And so just because, I guess sometimes I look at those to see what's popular, and then I'll see if this is something we would do at our church. And it's not always. And so I'm not saying that's a good vetting process for your songs, but that can give you a glimpse of what is working in the collective body of the church. And so that's kind of where I start.
I think part of the conversation for me is, and I've talked about this plenty of times on my channel, I don't introduce that many songs.
Yeah.
Like, I think some people think that they have to introduce a new song every month, and it's like the first Sunday of every month there's going to be a new song. And for me, I introduce a new song not on a regular rhythm, but I introduce a new song because I need to introduce a new song because of something that my pastor's teaching on, or because something's happening in the life of my church that needs to be responded to. And so because of that, I only have 26, probably up to 28 songs now in my worship song repertoire over the 3 years that I've been there at my church. So when you're not introducing a new song every month, and you're only introducing 6 new songs a year, it's a lot easier to find 6 new songs a year than it is to find 12 new songs a year, or for some people 24 new songs a year, where you're introducing new songs all the time. So if you're struggling to find new songs, my question would be, do you have enough songs already? Are you introducing too many new songs? It has never been a struggle of mine to be like, man, I just cannot find a new song that I need to introduce.
Well, I've been in a similar situation as the person who asked this question, where we as a church have also decided not to do Bethel, and
That's a good point.
And then after that, also not do Hillsong. And so, luckily, by God's grace, we didn't have too many from each. I think we had 5 or 6 songs from each of those. So in our repertoire, and we have a bigger library, so it's around 55 songs. And so I had to take 10 out. And of the Bethel ones, I didn't miss that many, but the Hillsong ones were like, that hit me harder, because Hillsong's been around a long time, and they have a lot of really good songs. And so that hit harder, even though it was only 5 songs that we took out. And so I really started having to do 2 things. Stop listening to Hillsong and Bethel near as much. Stop falling in love with the music, because we were no longer doing those songs. And started broadening what I was personally listening to, even if it was something I wasn't like drawn to. So I'll give specific examples. There's a band called City of Light. I think it's a Anglican ministry out of Australia. I think all those things are true.
That's true.
Okay. And it's not something I would have ever found on my own, probably. But my pastor had just come back from a trip. Another church was playing some of these songs. Like, you should look into them. And so we do some of their stuff now. I like, personally, high energy music. Like, that's just my preference. And a lot of their stuff is more slower hymn stuff. I will even take slow hymns like Come Thou Fount and How Great Thou Art, and make them a little more aggressive, because that's just what I like doing. And so not all of City of Light stuff is my favorite, but like the lyrics are solid, and I realize a lot of people in our church actually do like that stuff. So I've made that decision to start listening to more of their music, and I'm starting to grow to like it. And so that's just one example of, I just had to broaden what I personally was listening to.
So where can you go? Let's give some, or I will at least give some tangible places that you can go to find new music. And this is what I've done in the past. Number 1, just your personal listening. Like, most worship leaders aren't just playing worship music on Sunday morning. We're listening to worship songs throughout the week. So even unintentionally, you will find songs where you're like, I think that could be a good song for my church. So that is like the easiest place to start, because I'm already listening to music. Now, if I wanted to look intentionally, I would go to CCLI or Praise Charts, and that's not to say that I want to do every song on the CCLI Top 100 just because every church is doing it, but at least you know this is a popular song, so the people in my church might know it because they're probably listening to these songs as well.
For me, Multitracks and Loop Community are two websites where I buy tracks, and they also have similar lists of tracks that are being downloaded. So that's another resource for me. Another one is often me and my wife will just be listening in our spare time, and we'll have like a worship playlist on Spotify where it's not just one artist and stuff will come up, and then and so that might just broaden my listening. That might help broaden listening. And then Shane and Shane is always a good resource because they do covers of other songs, and so that's their worship initiative is also a good resource to look into.
And then I would just say the best place that I have found to find new worship songs is by watching other churches' live streams. I love to do that. I found so many songs that way because not only that, but like I always learn from watching how other people lead. Either I learn because I'm like, I don't like how they did that and I don't want to do that in my church, which I'm sure they'd think of if they saw me leading as well. Or I think, man, that was amazing how our friend Dalton Schaefer just led worship on his live stream at his church. And I've learned so much from watching him. I've learned so much from watching other worship leaders, not just like the big, Hillsong,
Celebrity
Passion, Bethel, or whatever, but like just the church down the road. You're allowed to watch their live stream, and it's not like stealing from them if you choose a song that they did because it's working in their church. So I like to be a student of worship live streams, and on Sunday afternoon, sometimes I just sit down and 50 of them pop up on my YouTube feed, and I just click on them and kind of thumb through and be like, that's a cool song. I've never heard that one before. So that's probably actually my current favorite way to find a new
That's
song.
completely new to me. I never watch other churches' live streams.
You should do it. We should
Sounds
watch a
fun.
live stream. Who's the live stream?
do it.
Let's watch Ben's live stream.
Ben.
I
know
know
who-
your last name,
Okay.
Ben. You sent me an email. Where are you going to watch your live stream? I don't know if I'll be able to find your church or not. Now, one of the ways that you can improve your worship leading is not just to pick new songs all the time, but to focus on the fundamentals of worship leading. And that's why I put together the 5 tips to instantly improve your worship leading audio training. In that audio training, I would teach you 5 of the basic fundamentals of worship leading. They aren't hard to do. All you have to do is make the conscious effort to do them, and your worship leading will instantly improve before this Sunday. So check out that audio training linked down in the description below. Other than that, thanks so much for joining us today. Until we see you in the next video,
Keep leading worship well.
Nailed it.